Hello, Stubscast is back once again, the Content Creator Hub podcast. If you'd like a great graphic from the graphic god, you can make overlays, logos, pictures, especially for your Xbox or if you're a content creator. Please go to www.xboxgamepics.com and the graphic god will sort you out there. This week, I have an excellent guest, Luke Lohr from the Xbox Expansion Pass. Welcome, Luke. How are you doing? Thanks for agreeing to come on. We got there eventually.
Are you kidding me? I'm
I know.
I'm grateful to be on. Thank you so much for having me. This is a blast. I'm excited. Let's do this.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. How are you doing then?
I'm doing well. We've had a good week of gaming news. I just crossed my 100th episode of my personal podcast, which is great. And I've got a nice kind of quiet weekend. My wife's away with her father, so it's the dog and I. And I've got a couple games on the docket, and the Halo Infinite beta is going on. So I've had a great day so far.
Congratulations on 100 episodes. I have listened to the 100 and of the past. I've been listening for quite a while. I have
Thank
now.
you.
It's a very good show. It is very well put together.
Thank you very much. I
It is.
appreciate it.
It is. So let's start off not within the podcasting field. So how did you actually get into gaming? I'm going to guess it's as a kid. So I've never had
Yeah.
someone go, no, I actually got into it in my 20s. You'd be
Yeah.
the first if you did say that. You would.
Well, I did get into gaming as a kid. I was
Okay.
very young. Let's see. Well, I was probably 4 or 5, perhaps, maybe
What?
even
Oh,
younger.
wow, that's a lot younger than me, I think.
Well, the thing is,
Nice.
my mother had a hard time kind of keeping my behavior in check, and still, perhaps you could say, she would give me a hard time and say she still does. But she one day needed to calm me down in an afternoon, and she pulled out my father and her old Atari. I
Yeah.
apologize, my dog just
Okay.
sneezed right next to me. I'm sorry.
It's
But
fine.
and we heard, or sorry, she put in the Empire Strikes Back game for Atari, which to me opened up some incredibly powerful worlds. Suddenly, I was in my favorite fictional universe as a child, and even still as an adult today, one of my favorites. And I was flying a snow speeder on Hoth against AT-ATs, and from that moment on, when I realized I could be a part of a new world and press buttons and interact with something on screen, I was hooked. And while finances didn't always let me have the latest and greatest, I was always a gamer from that moment on. And I still to this day adore the idea that I can be a part of another universe, another world, new worlds that people are creating all the time. And I take that not for granted, but with so much joy and graciousness because I'm just so appreciative to get to be in these worlds that people create. That's why I became a gamer.
Exactly. That's a very good memory there. That is. It's obviously you really enjoyed that system. Would you say that was was that your favourite system as a kid, or not?
No,
No.
no, it was my first experience, and if you'll
Yeah.
forgive the tongue in cheek approach, you always remember your first, and
Yeah.
having that moment there really opened my world, and from then, like trips to Chuck E. Cheese were very rare because my family didn't exactly have uh,
I heard
the
about them, but
finances.
I've heard of them. Obviously in England. Is
Sure.
that Chuck E. Cheese? Is it a place where you have loads of arcade machines and you go and eat?
Yes,
Is
that's
that it?
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, is a poor gamer's dream in my sense because
Okay.
the idea to be able to go and just play all these arcade games for an hour or 2 hours, it was so rare that it happened. And my parents worked hard to make sure that I had anything I could ever need. But certain
That's
fun
good.
things, like the latest and greatest systems, didn't happen. And so those moments were cool. And my favorite system as a kid is I don't know. What do you determine as a kid? Like below 10 years old, teenage
I
years? What do you
don't
think?
actually. Whatever you want to define, I don't know really.
My
I don't.
favorite system as a kid was probably my PlayStation 1, which I got when I was
Nice.
perhaps
Yeah. Very,
14, 13, 14 was
very
probably,
good system. Yeah.
yeah, that was probably my favorite system for sure.
I'm a Sega Mega Drive.
Oh, okay, cool,
You call
very
it
cool.
Sega Genesis. You
I
do.
do indeed call it Sega Genesis. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. They changed the name. They did.
Yep.
I don't. I can't remember why.
That
I
3-button
can't.
controller was something, man. But I'll tell you what, when they got that 6-button out there, that was a joy.
Yeah. I've got. Hang on. I. I've got the 3 button at the minute. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get hold of the 6 button because obviously I do have a. I've got a Sega Mega Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like them packing systems. I'd rather have the real thing.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah.
buy carts now. Cough. With every single game ever invented on. You
You
can.
certainly can. You certainly can.
You can.
I'm sure just to back up your original copy, of course. Of course.
Yes. Yes. You can. But yes. But no, the PS1 was a very good gen. I remember that. There were some very, very good games. Was Tony? Was that the one where the original Tony Hawk's was on, or was that too early?
Tony, no,
Or
that was
was that
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater ended up on everything, but the PlayStation
oh,
1 and Nintendo 64 consoles were kind of its first arrival, and then it made its way to Dreamcast, and
oh yeah,
uh,
it did.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a great,
So what?
great game for sure.
So what would you say your favourite games were on the PlayStation One?
Oh man, on the PlayStation 1, easily Metal Gear Solid stands out. That was the game that
Okay.
took
Yeah.
me from realizing that games could be arcadey to that games could tell a story. And when I realized that,
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
like a whole new moment for me in gaming. And I realized as a kid that I would be a gamer for the rest of my life because I enjoy stories so much. It's why I teach English and literature and such. I just enjoy stories, and so play the
Okay. Yep.
PlayStation
Yep.
ones. It's a magnum opus. Is Metal Gear Solid One. I love it.
No, I haven't. It's not. I'm not really into the Metal Gear games because I struggle with games like that. It's you got to be stealthy, ain't you? I'm no good at it. I'm
Hmm.
useless. I am. A stealthy bit comes up, I struggle. I do. I'm a bit clumsy. I'll run in there and ruin it. I
Well,
will.
we all start off trying to be stealthy, and then we end up guns blazing. At least when we play
Yeah.
Hitman, that's how I tend to notice it.
I think I did play that game you're talking about around my uncle's house. Though I had a couple of goes, but I was terrible. I,
Yeah.
I was. But no, yeah, some good games there. I presume, are you one of these people at the minute that's hoping for it to come back?
For Metal Gear Solid, the franchise or a remake?
Yeah, anything because people are clamoring for something, aren't they?
Certainly so. I think Metal Gear Solids 1 and 2 are just distinctly special games. In fact, the whole franchise is incredible. I'd argue Metal Gear Solid 4 is actually the best
Okay.
one, but it's the least approachable, and no one, if anyone's ever listening, no one should try to play Metal Gear Solid 4 without having experienced the other games because they did absolutely nothing to bring new players in. Um, and it's funny because Konami, for all their frustrating business practices, is sitting on this
Yeah.
brilliant franchise property they could do so much with. But I think Metal Gear Solid is just a fantastic series with plenty of flaws as well, as any Kojima project will have. It's a bit too intricate in some ways and whatnot, but the gameplay is bar none, and I enjoy a lot of that story.
No, that's good to hear. So, would you say that's your best franchise you ever played? Like the one you'd say, that's my go-to, that's my favorite.
No, I would not call it my favorite. More again, talking about you remember your first. That was the first one that told me
Oh
games could
yeah.
could tell a story.
Okay. Yeah.
My favorite franchise, not the best, but my favorite would be the Arkham series. The Arkham series does something special for a superhero fan like me, with great storytelling, great combat, and then just a massive amount of Easter eggs in every single iteration of the game. All four. Um, Five if you want to get technical, and I love that franchise. But I'm a guy who loves many different franchises across many different systems. I don't adhere to one policy of supporting one particular box
That's
or
what I love
whatnot.
to hear. I love to
Yeah,
hear that. I do.
yeah,
That's good to hear because you've got a big variety of games you have there
absolutely.
to choose from. Especially if you
Hmm.
like comic books, you definitely like Spider-Man
Yeah. Oh yes.
and the up-and-coming Wolverine whenever it comes out. So there's a
Oh
variety there
goodness.
for you.
Very
There
excited
is.
for them. Very excited for them. And while I lament whenever any major entertainment property goes exclusive, I don't think that's a good thing. I know people are clamoring for Batman to go exclusive to counter Spider-Man. I don't want that to
Mm,
happen.
no, I
Um,
don't because it sounds good, but the problem is what people say. Now, this is my thing. My people think on Microsoft, yeah, they can buy anyone. True, yeah,
yes, they do
but
have that money.
it's like this. It's like this situation. Like everyone's, oh, GTA buy Take Two, be exclusive. I'm like, no, 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 no. The board of directors will look at GTA and thought, this will make billions just sitting there on all the consoles, and they will keep that kind of game. It's like the
Mm,
Minecraft situation. They
sure.
like that. And I think if they ever got hold of the Batman IP, which I doubt they would, I think that would stay multiplayer. It's just the money. Microsoft earned the business of making money these days.
Mm.
Not every game has to be exclusive. If you ask me,
I agree. I agree with that mindset, but no, regardless, I think the bigger point that I want to touch on is the idea that
yeah,
when it comes to exclusivity, I think it's a tragedy that Spider-Man is exclusive, but Insomniac makes incredible games, and any comic book fan would do themselves a disservice if they abstained or took some emotionally political stance in avoiding them because few studios do it as well, and they've done a masterful job with Spider-Man. So I have a PlayStation because I'm a superhero fan and because they are currently the best superhero games exist on the PlayStation brand via Insomniac. And so, well, again, I'm bummed out when I see that Spider-Man is exclusive because he's such a beloved and amazing character.
it is. Yeah,
I'm so appreciative for the love and care that Insomniac puts into him. If they were just spitting out games that weren't worth anything, it'd be infuriating. But every single one of them thus far and their remasters have been beautiful and amazing and well treated. So there's something to that, I think.
oh yeah, they seem to. I mean, I'm playing Spider Man. I mean, I'm 12% in, and bearing in mind this, I've got a I'm borrowing my brother's base PS4 because he's got a PS5 at the minute,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a base PS4, but the graphics look very very good.
Mm-hmm.
They do. I was
Absolutely.
very impressed. I just got to get around this controller problem I've got.
Yeah,
It
the
makes my
DualShock
hand.
4 is not treating you well.
It's making my hands hurt. I don't know why. Someone told me it's because the controller's too small or the thumbsticks ain't right. I've got quite big hands. I don't know if that's the problem. I'm getting this. I'm getting like my wrists are starting to hurt. I don't get it.
You're
I've
probably
never
getting a
had
bit
it
of
before.
You're probably getting a little tendonitis, which is just agitation. That's a fancy word for agitation.
I'm getting
Um,
old.
yeah, I didn't want to say it like that, but if it makes you feel
Uh,
better, I have tendonitis
yeah.
in my right heel, and I'm the soccer
Oh,
coach
okay.
or the football coach, you might say. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
not good to have tendonitis in my
No,
heel.
it's not.
Oh, I'm getting old myself, you know.
No, but from what I can see from the game, I'm 12% in, and the graphics look amazing. And so far, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
I
you're in
am
for a treat. It's a
for
well
but
treated game.
Insomniac. If you've asked me, are PlayStation's crown jewel
Hmm.
and biggest get, and a steal at the price they paid.
Certainly so.
I know Insomniac don't own the Spider-Man IP. They just license it. Sony license it,
Hmm.
but still, you just think the mistakes that were made. That if history was different, that could have been a Xbox studio, you know.
Sure.
But that's I still say it's one of the biggest mistakes. But you can't go back in history, can you?
Well,
You
hindsight's
can't.
always 2020. You see things more clearly,
Exactly.
and let's be frank, Microsoft was a very different company
Oh,
itself
they were very
back
different,
then.
very different.
You know.
They didn't get funding. From what I understand back then, that was the days when there was some. I'm going to say allegedly now because allegedly there was some guy on the board of directors that was blocking a lot of the funding that they wanted to make games,
That is
and that
true.
was why. That's why they was. I say allegedly these days because
you,
you never know, do you?
you never know, I suppose. But
Exactly.
yeah, and again, I'll double down on the point that if you have a property that's locked behind an exclusivity deal, at least they're treating the property right with Insomniac, and I do appreciate that. When I boot that game up, I get excited every time, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would say so because they they're hitting it out the park from what I can see. People, the gamers are happy, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, it is.
Yeah.
So, so
Yeah.
obviously, you'd say so. Would you say the comic book genre is your favorite gaming genre to play out of everything? If you
Oh man, it probably is a fair statement, though I don't think of it that way. But I'm a
okay,
massive superhero fan. I love Marvel. I
yeah,
love DC. DC was what I grew up with, but I always played with and loved and enjoyed both of them. I enjoy those worlds the most, and so even when before the good previews about a game like say Guardians of the Galaxy, which is set to come out later this month,
yeah.
before the good previews, I knew I was going to play that game because I enjoy being a superhero and checking out those worlds. That's my favorite thing to do in games, though I don't only play superhero games for sure.
You play Marvel Avengers a lot, though, don't you?
I do play Marvel's Avengers a lot. Yep, that tends to get me some flack on the old internet, but
Well, not at the
I
minute. It's getting hype at the minute because you can all
it
play it for free in Game Pass. They can.
that's true, and something about that idea of getting a lot of flack for liking a game
You shouldn't
is
get
something
flack because you like it. That's it. That's all.
correct.
That's all that should matter.
And that's the point that I was going to make. Yeah, and as a content creator, since that's kind of our focus today, it is
Yes, it is.
difficult sometimes to like and enjoy something that the masses or a vocal minority are so quick to lambast. And I can remember when I really enjoyed Anthem and Crackdown, I just took a
Anthem,
beating.
nice game.
Yeah, but I took a beating for liking those games. And it wasn't like I was liking them and then not liking God of War, which is to me the best game ever made is God of War on PS4.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but in liking a game that's not super popular as a content creator, sometimes that can do you a disservice. But do I really want to live in a world where I'm not allowed to like and enjoy what it is that I like and enjoy? No, I'd rather celebrate that. And if people will join me for the ride, that's great.
No, I totally agree with that. It's like Anthem. I didn't complete all the content, but when I had a go on it, I did enjoy it because it had the potential. The way you were flying, it made you feel like you were Iron Man.
That's
It,
why I play
it,
Avengers. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
my favorite character in
That's
Avengers.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what made it feel like. It didn't have the content, in game
right.
content and everything. But it's a shame that they didn't try and reboot that. They decided to that's pull the plug. That
For
was gone.
Anthem. Yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
did completely. But yes, yeah. So you play a wide variety of games. I heard you
Oh
mention
yeah,
God of War there. So you're a very seasoned gamer. You are in general. You're not just because obviously because you do it an Xbox based show. People would ordinarily presume, oh, this guy just plays Xbox. But by the
sure.
sounds of it, you play multiple platforms, which is good to hear. It is.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I play multiple platforms. I often say, and it's something that my good friend of me, Mr. Badbit, often says as well.
Yes.
The the Xbox is the beat that I cover and
Yeah.
my primary console of choice, but it is not my only gaming space. I love and enjoy games in every place. I love PlayStation for sure, but it's
Yeah.
not my go-to system or go-to system of choice. But I will purchase and enjoy and play games on there often. And my love for Xbox does not mean I can't love PlayStation or if Nintendo were making things that I was super interested in, I'd be buying it there. My Switch, unfortunately, has collected a lot of dust since they've neglected
Okay.
some of the things that I look forward to. I'm still debating Metroid Dread because I love Metroid, but I don't know if I don't know if I want to spend the money on it given how they treat the franchise. We'll see. We'll see. There's too many questions around Nintendo right now for me.
That's fair enough. That is they have questionable business practices, but the problem is, will they change their ways? Because come on,
Yeah, it works
they're
for them.
making that much money. It's unreal. They don't have to do a lot of effort, and they just sell and sell and sell. They do.
Well, it's funny. I mean, I know we're going to talk about like kind of how I got the content creation, but how I ended up
Yeah.
doing Xbox specific stuff. was
Yeah.
because I started off the ninth or eighth gen, like PS4 and Xbox One. I started off as a
Yeah.
PlayStation gamer because they were treating gamers better at the time, and
Yeah.
Microsoft was not. And so I was like, well, I'm going where my money is best appreciated and going to get me the experiences I want. And it was when the Xbox One S came out
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
that I decided to make the switch mid-gen because I liked the direction Xbox was going, the value that they were offering, and then backward compatibility became a thing, and Game
Did
Pass
yeah.
arose in 2017, and so I felt though that I was more appreciated as a gamer, and that's why my primary place of choice became Xbox versus PlayStation, because as a gamer and somebody who doesn't have a ton of money, I mean I'm a teacher, so my money is not infinite. Um,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
had to be very choosy with my dollars, and that's where I ended up. Why I ended up where I did, as far as my
Well, no,
primary systems.
they're very good reasons because I'll be honest, because I used to buy like one or two games a year. I'm the same. I can't afford that many games per year,
Sure.
and Game Pass has saved me a lot of money. Well, I got in, when I had stacked up gold at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I got it. I'm one of them people that, and they said you can convert it all to Ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of them, and I've still not run out. But that's only because I'm topping it up via Game Pass rewards. I'm into mid next year at the minute. I am.
Wow. Okay. There you
I
go.
am.
I think I'm
So
in. Goodness, I'm trying to think about. I think I've got through 2023,
well
and
done.
I'm sure they'll raise the price at some point. I'm sure they will.
They will event. I think it's when they hit. I hear a golden number because obviously there's it. What I heard the number of 30 million now. It wasn't official. It was mentioned in an interview, but it wasn't actually official. But
Yeah.
I heard that there's a number going about that once they hit something like 50 million, they'll make an announcement
I
because
don't
the
know about that stuff,
might
and
not be, it may not be that.
I would argue I'm not an insider and I don't have insider knowledge. And I want to be very
Yeah,
clear about that. It's not a game that I enjoy to play, but I
I
do
know. Yes,
know on good account that that number is close to accurate based on the last things that I had heard. And
wow, I
with
can believe it.
if anything, uh, there are reasons they give and hold information, and it could be
Yeah,
profitability deals they're trying to cut, but there are a lot of examples of Game Pass doing great things for the people involved, the studios involved, and so I'm just glad to see the service is doing well because I think it's great for consumers, and Microsoft certainly seemed proud of it, and developers seem keen to get in there. A lot of the developers I've interviewed on XEP have talked about the process of getting into Game Pass and uh, whether they would or would not like to be there. And almost universally, they would enjoy Game Pass. They find it has good results. And the
yeah,
deals are individually cut. There's not like a blanket statement deal. So it always depends. But it's funny now that as consumers, we tend to look at games like Death's Door recently launched a couple months ago, and it was Xbox exclusive, but not on Game Pass, and we were all surprised by that. You know,
yeah. The numbers were massive on that game. It really
certainly,
was.
certainly, with good reason. It's a great game. It's a wonderful
Still,
game.
still got to finish that. Still playing it. I struggle with them kind of games, but I will get there in the end.
Yeah.
I will. But no, that's so. When when did you first hear about a podcast? As in, what was the first podcast you heard? Was it pre YouTube? Did you used to
Mhm.
have an Apple iPod and you have iTunes? And was that when you
I
first heard of a podcast?
I
What
was an
was?
Android person. I'm an Android person, but my first
Yeah.
podcasting experience came in the mid 2000s. I was in and exiting college, and
Okay.
whenever I had car trips to take for one reason or
Yeah.
another, I would go to IGN. I mean, I listened to IGN's podcast quite a bit in the mid 2000s, and I
Okay.
would
Yep.
burn the MP3s onto a CD to play in my
Wow.
car because
Interesting. Nice.
yeah,
Wow.
that's what I would do to fill the time. Because when I realized that there were people out there on the internet that
Yeah.
would record or have radio like conversations about topics I cared about, which was either Major League Soccer. MLS,
Yeah.
American football, not American football, but like what you would call football here in America, and
Yep. Okay.
of course video games. I was enamored, and I eventually became a sports journalist and covered Major League Soccer myself, and had my own sports podcast for a good bit.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that was a
Wow.
blast at one point in my life. Interesting phase. Long ago, a life I've long since left.
Fair enough. I learned something there. I did. I did.
Yeah, that was
Um,
it did well. I got to interview uh, millionaires and football players and GMs of
was it
different
really
sports teams.
popular? Like, was it really popular? Did you get like
It was
really
more
popular
popular.
downloads, bro?
It was more popular than XEP is, for sure, because it was in such a
Okay.
niche
Yeah.
space. Very few people were making Major League Soccer content, and I was interviewing pro athletes 2, 3, 4 times a week. So
That's
yeah,
nice.
it was neat. It was
And
really cool.
the archive's still there.
Oh, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, and because it's
Yeah.
sports, it was time sensitive. But anybody that cares to look it up, it was called Off the Bench, and
Off the
I've long
bench.
since stopped trying to host it. I mean, so like I don't know if it exists somewhere in a nebulous
You
ether
never know.
server. But
You never
yeah,
know.
anyone's welcome to look it up. It might be there. Maybe
Yeah,
I was
maybe.
younger and more brash.
So, wait, we go. So, what podcasts and content did you watch that, how would I say, inspired you to actually want to think, I want to give this a go and see if I can do it in the games field, like what you do now? And
Okay,
was there any podcasts you did before you started XCP? Did you go on anyone else's podcast to try it out in the games field before you actually thought, I'll start my
sure.
own? Was
Sure,
it?
sure. Um, well, I mean, I listened to IGN podcasts from when they started, when Unlocked was once called Three Red Lights, and when Podcast
Yeah.
Beyond was Greg Miller and Colin Moriarty's baby in the very beginning. Well, Jeremy Dunham, his
Okay.
baby, and then
Yeah.
Greg kind of entered that sphere, and then he grew to make Kind of Funny, which is a testament to his work ethic. And Kind of Funny was something I listened to for a good while, no longer, but for a
Okay.
good while. And as far as my time in the gaming podcast space, uh,
Yeah.
I was a co-host on a show called the Xbox Drive, which is still going to this day. It's hosted by Sean Capri, and I believe his co-host
Okay.
now is
Yeah.
Ryan Turford. They're very popular in their own right, Canadian podcast covering Xbox. They're wonderful. I did that for
Okay.
goodness a long while. I don't know how many episodes I was on, but at least 50, if not more. Um, and when Sean and I we had a disagreement on where the direction of the show could go.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Okay.
it was rough at the time, but really and
Yeah.
truly, right now, I count Sean Capri as one of my favorite content creators, and I would encourage you to look him up if you've not. We had a divorce and a breakup, so it hurt at the time,
Oh,
but
okay.
really and truly, great show. And XEP is the show I wanted to make, and the Xbox Drive in its current form is what he wanted to make, and they're both doing well, and I'm very proud of him and myself. So I'm really pleased to have had that opportunity. But that was the genesis of XEP. Was my time there, what I learned from that.
Oh, that's good to hear. So, what? Because obviously, a lot of podcasts now they do what I do. I'm on YouTube, and a lot of people catch the podcast. Everyone's playing Halo at the minute. That's why there's not many people watching. We all know everyone's playing Halo,
Mm,
and I bet the minute you get off here, you're going to jump on back onto Halo. I
hmm.
guarantee it.
Oh yeah.
And so obviously I do it on YouTube, and I do upload it to podcast feeds after next
Hmm.
day or so. And you went. A lot of people do the YouTube route, but you actually you do the um, editing, and you edit it all up into a podcast like you meant to.
Hmm.
In nice jingles and how you actually meant to do podcasts, because a lot of people don't do that anymore. Just do a
Right.
YouTube and chuck it on feeds like I do.
Hmm.
What made you want to go to the real podcast way, like downloads and not YouTube? And
Well,
no, please note everyone that Xbox Expansion Pass is now on YouTube.
hmm,
It is.
yeah, it's just the audio files.
Yeah, it
I
is.
have
Yeah.
very little interest in being a producer. The editing
Okay.
that I do is not nearly that of some audiophiles out there who have more talent and interest in learning that. I just love talking about games. And so that is where my interests kind of start and end. And in order to talk about games, I needed to, at the very least, learn how to edit a podcast. But YouTube is
Okay.
its own
Yeah.
beast, its own route. And the problem with YouTube, in many ways, is that its algorithms change and they can wipe you out immediately with almost no warning. There are a lot of practices that put a lot of YouTube primary content creators in a predicament if they're trying to grow or monetize. Now, I'm not trying to monetize, and while I would love to grow, XEP is about me enjoying video games and having fun. It is not meant to be God's gift to podcasting, and I love when people check out the show, and I hope people do. And if it's right for you, stick around. That doesn't have to be your favorite podcast, but if you enjoy it, put it on that list. Uh, but it is meant to be fun, and I was not going to have fun if I was spending more time editing and producing than talking
Yeah.
about games. So
Okay.
that's what made that decision easy for me to go with the audio route, and it's less pressure. Like I asked you today before we did this if I needed my camera, and when you said no, I was like, okay, no problem. That tells me like, okay, I don't need to stress certain aspects. My setup doesn't need to be perfect. I don't have to have an
Yeah.
expensive
Exactly.
outfit or some sort of presentable
Yeah.
approach to it. You know?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But no, that's a fair point. That is. That's a It's a high quality podcast. If anyone hasn't checked it out, please check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. In fact, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
everywhere.
All your
You
podcast
find.
services, and then the audio files are on YouTube as well, for sure.
So I have listened to. I went back and listened to. I DM'd you, and
Hmm.
you said wait till the podcast. So obviously I listened to a few. Well, I listened to number 3 and some other early shows, and
Hmm.
what I noticed from then and now is your production. Well, I think you have. I don't know whether you've changed your style of production. I don't know whether you've become more confident at interviewing guests and more confident behind the mic. Because obviously, I just get the impression that over time you got better at your craft. Yeah, would you say you've learned a lot since when you've started and now?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. The first episodes of XCP, I believe, rolled out in October of
And they did.
2019.
Where are they, mate? Where are they? 1, 2, and 3. Where
That
have they
that made
gone?
me chuckle. They didn't. They shouldn't be gone. They
On
should. Let's see. They're hosted on Podbean, and
on
it takes
Spotify. They're
well,
not
it's
there.
that's odd to me. It takes time when you activate a feed and then
Hmm.
connect an RSS for it to pull from its original hosting site. So everything's on
Okay.
Podbean, and then the RSS feed gets pulled by Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, any other podcast service. Shoot, it's even on Pandora, which I'm sure. I mean, I see the numbers. Not many people listen on Pandora, but you know, they exist for sure, and they are
Okay.
there. I've seen them, but
I have to look on a different service as well because it doesn't show me on Spotify. I have to go on a different one to
that's
have a
it's
look. Then
yeah,
I
that's
will.
interesting. But I chuckled because it was like, should I worry about this? I'm like, nah, I don't really need everybody to go check out the first ones because, as you said, uh, time and craft connect accordingly, and over time, I do feel I've gotten better at what I wanted to do, and more importantly, I don't know that it's just a matter of getting better so much as deciding the direction I wanted to go. I wasn't exactly sure the way I wanted XEP to sound when it first started, and now I am. Like now I am sure what I want it to be, and so it sounded a bit more robotic. It sounded a bit more official in the first opening days, whereas now it's a bit more Luke. It's a bit more
Yeah,
me.
because what I noticed is, from what I gather, you don't edit everything out now, do you? You will
No,
keep certain. You. What I noticed is you in your earlier podcast. I never heard you say
correct.
and I was like, has he edited that? I was
I
like,
did.
everyone says at least once.
Absolutely.
And
And I
nowadays, you're
did.
quite happy to say it. You don't say it a lot, but you do. You try not to say it. but
Correct.
I noticed it was more edited, and now it feels like mostly you leave it in unless you make a mistake or something. It seems that way. I could be wrong.
Well, I don't edit any of the ums out anymore. I did in the first, I
Okay,
would say, 10 episodes, and it was the
okay,
worst. It was a bad practice. It felt unnatural. It felt to me that when I would listen back, it just sounded so robotic. And if I listen to the best podcasters, sportscasters, people that are on microphone, those ums and uhs, they are wonderful for showing your audience that you are thinking, that you are contemplating, that you are working your way through something, which to me feels more human.
it does.
So,
You
to that
correct.
effect, I've now left them in to the benefit, I think to the
It's
benefit.
working. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, uh, to be a bit more human to error on air is fine with me now because I want people to identify with me as a person and not just, no one's going to Xbox Expansion Pass only for their gaming news. There are better places, more well produced places, better funding, more time available to them. Um, but I hope they come to me for genuine analytical thoughts. If they're interested in industry interviews, I hope they're coming to me. Or if they're coming to me to enjoy Xbox without putting down Nintendo or PlayStation or any other gaming site. Critique is important, but attacking companies just because they're a different company is not. So that's why I hope people come to XEP. Analytical views and comfortable, fair critique. That's my hope, anyway.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Because I would say, like, for your friend Joe from,
He's
I'm doing the
he's
ums
ugly.
now,
The trophy room, but he's ugly. He's
the
ugly. You
PS
don't need to
Trophy
talk
Room.
to him.
He doesn't bash either, and he talks about Xbox as well in a good way.
Hmm.
Because I brought up and I think you mentioned PlayStation odd time, or am I wrong? Am I wrong? I might
All
be
the
wrong.
time. How can you
You
talk
do,
about
yeah, you
Xbox
do,
relevant news without
you
pointing
do,
out
yeah.
their biggest competitor and
But you're
discussing their
both
moves?
positive. That's what I'm trying to point out. You both have a positive spin on it. You do,
Right.
rather than there is podcasts that literally they're Xbox podcasts, but the whole 2 hours are sitting there talking trashing PlayStation,
Yeah.
and there's PlayStation shows just talking about Xbox the whole time. It's sad. And don't get me
Well,
started on these Twitter Spaces. Oh, I tell you.
oh, they're toxic as can be, and I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I very, very, very clearly know that I could have more listeners, better numbers, if I dove into that space of being a bit more hostile about gaming. And
Yeah.
I watched I listened to some of the creators to come on your show, and I have my own thoughts and opinions about them, good, bad, everywhere in between, right? Just as they would with
Yeah.
me or anyone else.
Yeah.
But I'm aware that if I went in and every episode was an attack on PlayStation and and just telling everybody about how great Xbox was, I know that I would get more listeners and more views. But are those the
That's
people I
yeah.
really want in my community discussing things? The answer is no.
No.
Comfortably no. I would rather celebrate games wherever we can as opposed to putting any of them down.
No,
So,
that's good to hear. You want to you've built a nice community up of regular listeners weekly.
yeah.
I don't always write in, but I do listen.
Thank
I
you.
haven't. I don't think I've wrote in to ask a question yet. I don't think.
Well, I do greatly appreciate you listening and anybody else that gives it a shot. And if it's your speed, stick around. I'd love to have you. And if not, that's fine too.
But it is a good show. But one thing I wanted to ask you: you get a big variety of industry, get games industry people. Like you get voice actors,
Hmm.
developers, all sorts. Now, how do you go about getting them? Because I did wonder because some of these people I would call quite high profile. Some I'm not talking Phil Spencer level, but they're quite high profile people. Some of them.
Hmm.
And do you have? Did you just send a nice email, or do you reveal your downloads for your podcast, or do you just build up a relationship with them via email? It's just a nice conversation. Is that how you get them on the show? Is there a secret source to what you do to get them to come on for an interview?
I would not say it's a secret sauce. No, what I would say is it depends on the guest. It depends
Okay.
on the type of guest as well. Oftentimes for developers, if I
Yeah.
like the game or I think the game is relevant to people, then I will reach out to their PR or whatever contact PR email they have listed on their sites.
Okay.
On
Thank you.
occasion, I've had PR outlets come to me because I built a relationship over the last few years of covering games, of discussing games. Perhaps
Yep.
I'd interviewed another of their clients, they'll come to me, or I'll go to
Okay.
them and say, hey, I see you're representing this group. Remember when we worked on this project? I would love to talk to whomever. Um,
It's
when it
nice.
comes
That
to
is.
voice actors, there's a little bit of a different process because
Okay.
many of them have agents or they're part of SAG, which is the Screen
Okay.
Actors Guild, and that has its own
Okay. Yeah.
rules. One thing I don't do is go to a company and say, I get X amount of downloads. May I talk to this person?
Okay.
I don't do
That's
that.
okay. Yeah. That's good to hear. I just didn't know how you approached it because I'm not that experienced in asking. Like, I've never had a developer on yet
Hmm.
on these kind of shows, but it. I didn't know what your process was to get in them. I didn't know whether they wanted to know your downloads. Obviously, they don't. That doesn't come into it, which is good.
Well, there are
It
people
is.
that will ask for that, and
Oh, okay.
I'll make a judgment call and decide if I think they're asking in earnest. Like, why
Okay.
are they asking? Are they asking? What are the reasons? And anybody that is asking, like a PR company asking, I think that's a fair thing. You should know, and any content creator should know that they have very simple ways of measuring your numbers. That's a very easy thing for them to do, and they can figure out if you're telling the truth or not. So don't bump your numbers up, as it
Is
were.
that
Be
interesting?
honest.
Really? Can they? So
Absolutely.
say you're on podcast feeds. They've got a way of looking how many downloads that you've had.
Yes,
Oh,
they can pretty accurately
okay.
ballpark what how many downloads or listens you're getting. YouTube algorithms are interesting, but if you are live streaming a YouTube feed, then
Yeah.
it will count people multiple times if they're watching past a certain amount of minutes, which
Okay.
is interesting. I think. Um, yeah, they can pretty accurately gauge your numbers and your reach and your audience. So there's never a reason to be dishonest. And I will also note that there are many PR companies that don't care at all about your numbers. What they care is about your engagement and your audience. And I would argue that XEP is among the smaller of the Xbox podcasts, but the engagement is very high. People write in, people discuss. Many people will purchase games, or at the very least look into them based on recommendations and interviews, and that does me a good service as well. Um, the key to a lot of those reaching out in emails and those contacts is being polite, offering
Okay.
links to previous content, and saying, "Hey, I would love to have you. I would love to talk to you. This is other work that I've done in this kind of space. If you're interested, could we set something up?" And oftentimes the answer is no. Subs for the I would say I get rejected 2/3 of the time,
Really?
and yeah,
Okay.
but there's
Well,
nothing
but
wrong
at
with
least he
that,
said no. Like, at least he said no. They didn't ignore you.
It does
It's
happen
not.
too. That happens too, sure, but I don't mind it when it does. And if that stopped any content creator from making content, then they probably don't want to actually be making content. Um,
Yeah.
they probably just want clout or the viewership or the interview, and that's not why I particularly do it. I guess I would say.
No, that's good to hear. It's nice to hear some companies obviously do say no, and it's nothing to be ashamed of
Sure.
because some companies or some they just want there is some that they think it's like I had this Lord Cognito when I had him
Great
on
human
back
being.
last he's a great guy.
Yeah.
I had him on last Christmas around December time last year, and
Hmm.
he was talking about that, and he said that's generally he says I'll go on any podcast, I'll look into your channel, and if he said as long as you're not a drama troublemaking kind of content creator, I'll
Hmm.
go on because he says I hate it. He says when you reach out to somebody and they just ignore you, and he says you're not alone, Stubbs. He says the Iron Lords get ignored. He
Hmm.
says it happens a lot, and he says they want hundreds. Some of these people want you to have a channel of 100,000 subs or views or whatever. He said I don't understand that. But he says it does happen. He says even on Twitter, oh, I'm not going to reply to you. Why
Yep.
you dick? Yeah, you done a thing with Ainsley on industry perspectives where he got his phone out and he goes, "Why are you DMing me?" You know,
Right.
it's
Right.
like an ignorant sentence. Why can't people just say no? Sorry, I'm not interested. They just ignore you instead.
It's
But
true.
that's the
One of
way
the
it is.
funniest. I'll tell you a funny story, but I won't tell you the name. When XEP
Okay, fair
first
enough.
started,
Yeah,
I asked for I reached out to a ton of content creators to ask for
yeah,
advice and for them to listen to XEP and discuss what it was I needed to work on. And one of them wrote me back and said, "Sure, I'll be happy to." And then I went to him a week later and I said, "Hey, did you get a chance to?" And he said, "Yes, you and your co-host have great chemistry. Keep working on your content. Avoid the ums and the uhs, and keep it up. And maybe change your name
Oh,
because we don't want we don't want anyone to think that you're Xbox specific." Now, Stubbs, I don't have a co-host,
yes, you
and
don't.
I
No.
had edited out every single in that episode,
Yes.
and and the show is about Xbox. And this is a very high profile content creator who
All
everybody
right.
that listens to this would know. And he
Okay.
straight lied to me about listening to the show.
Wow.
So it's like, why would you do that? Just say, "Hey, I appreciate it. I'm on time. No, thank you." There is no offense taken in this space, or should not be, when people are busy. We have a lot of lives and we have stuff to do. And maybe this person just didn't want to listen to this Scrubs new Xbox show that barely had any episodes. But this dude straight lied to me. So now every time I see him in whatever place he is in, and he's
Yeah.
having great success, and I wish him all the best,
Yeah.
I have this unfortunate tainted memory of him just lying to me about stuff. I was like, why would you do that? You know, maybe he was trying to be. His lie was intended to be supportive, but
Yes, it was.
so actively disrespectful that it defeated the purpose. And it's just odd. It's just odd. But there's nothing wrong with honesty and just saying, "Hey, I don't have time," or "No, I can't do it." My favorite emails, perhaps not my favorite, I should rephrase that. Some of my most appreciated emails are when PR companies, gaming developers, or content creators, high profile people write back and say, "Hey, Luke, I appreciate it. I'm going to say no on this one. I can't do it, but I wish you all the best." That I had a wonderful gaming editor in the Xbox space, very high
Oh yeah.
profile. Again, everybody would know this
Okay.
person. I've had this person on my show before. I asked them to return for episode 100. He couldn't do it. Couldn't make it happen. Schedule, timing, busyness, what have you. And he wrote me the most respectful decline. And I appreciated that so much because he didn't have to do that. He could have ghosted me and
That's
just ignored me.
that's
But it
fair
means so
enough.
much. It means so much when people just answer. You know, it really does.
Yeah, no, that's nice. It's good to hear that they say it in a respectful way. It's nice that
Sure.
is. And
Sure.
it's weird because sometimes I'm not gonna say who it is. Someone follows me on Twitter and they've got like 113,000 followers and they've like got a tick and the person follows me. I don't know why.
Hmm.
And I DM them to invite them on the show, and I got nothing. I don't know why this person follows me. Not got a clue.
Yeah,
I
it
don't know.
happens. Those things happen, and
I know.
it's odd. I've been ghosted by people that I've been on their shows before, and they just stop talking to me. And it happens. Like that. That is part of the
Exactly.
world.
It
And
is.
while I am bitter about a couple of them, it does me no good to stay bitter. And
No,
so
it
I just had
doesn't.
to move on. You know, I just had to move on and get
Exactly.
over it.
No. It's the way forward. So I'm going to ask you with Apple, with your Apple podcast, because my podcast don't do very well on Apple at all. I've got one review. That's it.
Hmm.
And do you have any way of promoting the Apple podcast anymore? Or is it just the same way you always have? You got any, like, obviously you can
Are
ask for
you?
5-star reviews. You can. Have
Yes,
you
and
got any
dropping.
way of have you
So
got any way
Joseph
of
Moran from
promoting?
the Trophy Room is
Yeah.
better at this than I am. He is a great pitch. It should take 20 seconds or less about why
Yeah.
people should take the time to go give you a review. He is the master at that, and I learned from him
Yeah.
on that
Okay.
one. He's still ugly, but uh, one thing for sure is I often will do like, "Hey, when I get to this amount of reviews, I'm going to give away a copy of a game or something like that," and that comes out of my own pocket. And I do that uh, because it makes me feel good to know that people are willing to take the time to reviews, but some of them just want a free game, and I understand that too. No qualms about admitting that. But
Yeah.
if you want Apple iTunes reviews, you need to find a way to motivate your audience, whatever that
Yeah.
means. Um,
Okay.
Apple's weird, YouTube's weird, they're all weird. And I will say to any content creator, you and anyone else included, if you live and die by the numbers, you're going to die by the numbers. It
I
can't
agree with
be
that.
about that. It's just, it consumed me for my first like 30 episodes or so. And I was so worried about it. I was like, am I good enough? Am I good enough? And I'm like, shoot, if 5 people are listening to me, that's incredible. Imagine 5 people coming over your house just to hang out with you.
Exactly. That's good.
Imagine 10, 30, 50, 500, whatever the number is. Like, if X, I have a number in my mind. If I hit that number every week, I'm so happy. And I know that some of the people that have been on your show before would laugh at how small that number might be. But to me,
Yes. Yeah.
means the
I know.
world. It means the
You are
world.
right.
So,
No, I agree with you. Because I've had Random Dealer on, and with obviously on the YouTube numbers, Random Dealer are the number ones. I
sure,
don't look at the views, but they are. Like
sure.
dealers show seven after the fact, and when it builds up over time, it's in the 700, 800 views area, and
If
Rand's not. But
Well, there are two good examples of communities that are similar and certainly have some overlap, but they are different. If you go look
yeah,
at either Dealer or Rand's chats, there are some people in there that I would not want in my chats. And
oh no, yeah,
how well a content creator does at curating that is important to
it
the type of
is.
content creator they want to be. And I really enjoy Randolph Thor's views and takes. Sometimes I think he's off the wall, and other times I'm like right there with him, and that's exactly what I want from a
Yeah,
content creator. But I don't hear a lot of negativity from Rand about
no, it's not
competition,
negative.
and that's
No,
appreciated.
it's
Um,
good that is.
yeah,
But no, I fully agree with your views on if you keep your eye on the views. Because to be honest, I mean, I enjoy doing these Dubscast shows. I do a weekly show with midweek game minutes where I have a group of
yeah.
people and we talk about different topics, and they get about we get about 70 to 80 views, and probably about 10 views on the on the downloads. I'm happy with that. I am, because if I looked at the numbers, I would have quit. If I was so bothered about numbers, I would have quit a long time ago. Out of all the podcasts I do, I enjoy talking to people like yourself. I enjoy the more one-on-one interview style, and that's exactly what you do as well, because you have
Hmm.
interviews. But you go, but yours is more because you have sections where you talk
Hmm.
and you by yourself. And I don't generally do that, but that's your style of show, which is good. And you are right not to get wrapped up in the numbers, which many people do. You know.
Sure, sure. And I did at one point too, but then I was just so unhappy. And I was holding myself to standards that I don't think were realistic. Like because I'm a solo show, I do things when I want, when I feel like it, unless there's an interview or
Yeah.
co-host that I bring in as a guest.
Yeah. Okay.
Tomorrow, at the time of this recording, tomorrow I'm scheduled to record episode 102. I don't have a time
Nice.
frame for when I want to do that. I don't have to certain time of day I need to do it. My wife is amazingly supportive. And like if I don't want to do it, like right now I do not feel like doing it. I'm anxious, I'm tired, and I'm like, do I want to record 102 in that state? No. Maybe I
No.
just don't. And if my audience was not supportive of that, then I don't know that I would be as appreciative of them. But they would all support that, and then that makes me motivated to do it because they're in it for the right reasons and being kind and supportive to one another. So it's an interesting thing, It's an interesting thing, numbers and motivations for why we make podcasts and content. Because there's 1,000 Xbox podcasts out there or gaming podcasts.
Yes,
Why would anybody
there
want to
is.
listen to you or me or anything else? We got to give them the reason, and I want that reason to be a reason I'm proud of. So that's it.
No, no,
That's my take.
definitely good opinions on that. It is with regards to podcasts and views, and it's a big problem with numbers. People get very wrapped up in that, and it can destroy most channels. It can, because this is what people think. I'm going to make a channel, going to make a video, I'm going to make a podcast, and I'm going to blow up overnight. I'm going to wake up and there'll be 20,000 views. That ain't the real world.
Right.
That ain't,
No.
you know. But for my last, I won't keep you much longer. I've got just two more.
Sure.
What are your future? What are your future goals for the Expansion Pass podcast? And have you got any plans to make any other kind of content, any videos or anything?
No plans for video content. That's an easy
Okay.
one. It's not my
Yeah.
wheelhouse, and it's not what I would
Okay.
enjoy making because there's a lot of production that goes into it.
Oh, a lot goes into it because I do try and make videos. I made one last week. I am trying to. They're not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. It's
Right.
not.
Yeah, and I don't enjoy that. Um, as far as like audio podcasting stuff,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
mentioned Cast Co-op when we were off air. I
Oh
co-host. I would
yes,
say
you do.
I host Cast Co-op with two other podcast hosts, and that is a blast. That is a very different take on podcasting than XEP is, and I enjoy that. And I encourage people to check that out. It's much more comedic. It's with the Ainsley Bowden, the editor in chief of Season Gaming. .com, and then of course my friend of me, Mr. Badbit, Joseph Moran, who we often mention. We all do that together. I mean, we just are goofy and fun. But
It
as
is
far
a
as
funny
future,
show.
it's meant to be, and I'm glad you think so, and I hope others enjoy it because it's meant to be silly and a good time. But as far as future XCP content, I have different interviews scheduled throughout the rest of the year that I know of, plenty that I
Ooh.
don't know about, plenty that I haven't even reached out on. If I'm interested in the game, I'm going to ask people to be on that are relevant to it. So Gotham Knights is one that I'm super excited about, and I would love to have uh, some people on from Gotham
That'd be cool.
Knights.
That would be really good. That would be.
The last voice actor I had, it was a voice actor. She will be in Gotham Knights, which is really neat. She talks a bit about that.
I
That was
remember now.
episode
Yeah.
100. But
Yes. That's it.
I'm gonna have one of the devs on as well, and I just want to make content that is enjoyable for people and interesting and expands their knowledge of the gaming industry. That's the reason that the name is what it is. I want to expand my knowledge of the gaming industry and help others do the same. So that's the genesis of the idea, and hopefully people check it out because the interviews are part of the show, but it's not the show. So I never want to promise something that I can't deliver. And as I said, I get rejected a lot when it comes to those things. But if people ever have someone they want me to talk to, let me know, and I'll reach out to them and do my best to get them on the show. And I don't mean content creators. The XCP is not the space for that. Now they could co-host or whatnot, but XCP interviews are more for industry professionals, whereas co-hosting seats, I would put another content creator on. I want to have, like we mentioned, Randolph Thor. At some
Yeah.
point, I would love to have Rand help me co-host an
That would
episode.
be cool.
You know
That
what I
would be.
mean? But
That'd
it
be
would
the.
make, yeah. Go ahead.
That'd be the day you get Phil on. Phil Spencer.
Oh man, that's the dream of most Xbox content creators. But
It is.
in the big Xbox space, Sarah Bond is a voice that I will time and time again sound the drum that I would love to talk to. I want to give my students, my young girls of color, a role model to look at when they listen to XEP. I want them to hear Sarah speak, and that way I can point to my interview with Sarah to them and say, look, you can do this. You love games. There is a space in gaming for you. Um, that's what I want to have. There are a lot of interviews I've done that I'm just very proud of that talk a lot about equality in the gaming space and bringing people involved in the gaming space outside of kind of your standard white guy affair.
Yeah.
That's important to me also. And so there's so much I want to do with XEP, but at the end of the day, it must be fun, it must be positive, and it must celebrate games from everywhere whilst covering the Xbox space.
Yeah, that rounds it up. I mean, it's good. You got some good plans ahead because I can tell because a lot of the interviews you
Thank you.
do cover a wide variety. It's like you have covered equality because there was what I can't remember exactly which one it was. There was one where I could hear you getting you got a bit choked up during the interview because of what it was about as
Mm-hmm.
well. I can't remember which one that was, but
Probably,
because the passion comes through, it's
yes.
genuine. It's not fake. It's 100% genuine. All the interviews you do,
Yeah.
and they're for a purpose and reason, which is good.
Yeah. There was a couple mental health episodes where
I may have been them, and yeah,
where I had the games online harassment hotline director come on and talk about what they do, and that got me real good because at the risk of sounding a bit too personal, there was a phase in my life where I was ready to end my life and I was about to do it. I was
oh
very,
no,
very close to it, but Gears of War 3 hadn't come out yet, and I didn't know how
okay,
Marcus and Dom's story ended, and that got me through. And like, what an odd thing to make it through. And we talk about mental health in our gaming field
yeah,
so often. Games have done so many things for so many people. That's where I think that emotion comes from because gaming is a steadrock thing for everyone, right? For
this is
most people that
yeah,
play it, and they can do some wonderful things for us. And so, yeah, if I get choked up on an episode here or there, there's good reason for it, and I take no shame in that. I'm very confident, capable. So I would argue, proud of the type of man that I am, proud of the type of man I'm working to be, and still not there yet. And I take no shame in those moments of vulnerability, if that makes sense.
it's totally fine. And that's totally fine. That is. It's
Yeah,
good to hear. It is. And Masuku, welcome. I know you've been here the whole time. I haven't been ignoring you. Sorry. He said Sarah Bond is great on the Xbox streams that I've seen.
yeah,
That
yeah.
would be a very good guest
She's a
to get.
dream interview. If ever I chart on the Xbox's radar, Xbox proper's radar,
Yeah.
that's somebody I would love to interview. Again, for that reason, like I am a teacher by day, and
Yeah.
I want to be able to show my students that gaming has a ton of careers for them, and there are a lot of people of color that I teach that don't see gaming as a viable option, particularly young ladies of color. And one of the books on my shelf in my classroom is Women in Gaming, 100 Women in Gaming. Very proud of that.
Okay.
Um,
Nice.
there are people I want to bring on the show that perhaps I'm not high profile enough for, but role models for them to look forward to is something that is in the back of my mind often when I seek out certain guests. Not all, of course. Sometimes it's just a matter of, hey, your game's really cool. Come talk about it, and that happens plenty as well.
No,
For sure.
that's good to hear. It's a good outlook and positive thing for your show going forward. And that's exactly what I can see in your show when I listen to it weekly.
Thank you.
I can see it's not just you're not a clout chaser. You're doing
No,
it for genuinely good content because you want to influence people for the future. You can.
thank you,
Well, just
thank
by
you.
listening, you can.
That means the best. That means so much for you to say. So I appreciate it.
And also, the last question is this one: do you have any advice for anybody who wants to start out being a podcaster, apart from don't do it?
uh, Man, I have lots of advice for people who want to do it. Sure. First, if you want to make a podcast, make one. Go ahead and make one. Don't buy yourself an expensive mic. Don't spend a lot of money. The microphones are very cheap. Um, there are ways to do it. I feel bad because right now I'm having to use a backup mic, so I don't think my voice sounds as good as I would like it to. But use whatever mic you have available, put it out there, listen to your own content at first, be critical of yourself, but not punishing of yourself, and ask yourself, what is it I want to make? What do I want to make? Am I proud of it? And how do I want to grow? Is it a numbers thing for you? Is it engagement? Is there somebody specific you want listening? Uh, if there's a certain person in the field of whatever your podcast interest is, whether you want to talk about fishing or gaming or any of the other interests that kind of culminate podcasting, is there a role model that you could look towards that you would want to emulate at first while you find your voice? There's nothing wrong with that. There are a couple that I emulated in the opening at months of XEP before I found my own
Okay.
voice, for sure. And allow yourself to be flawed would be the other one. Make it because you enjoy it. Make it because you're proud to make it and you would like to share it with people that you think would enjoy it also. And if you're living and dying by numbers, then you absolutely will die by numbers, or you'll fall prey to what many content creators fall prey to, and that is hyperbolic statements, exaggerated phrases, and everything is the worst. Uh, that isn't your narrative, and that sucks. And I don't want to be that person, and I don't want to listen to that person. And for that reason, there are a lot of gaming podcasts that I have little interest in, and I'm sure to the same effect, don't want to talk to me because I don't do that. and that's fine too.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of spaces to enjoy.
exactly. No, that's excellent advice. That is, as you say, it's not if you want to just if you just want to get going and try a podcast, it's really simple. You can even just use a mobile to record it.
Certainly.
Like you got the Anchor app. The Anchor
You
app, you can record directly straight into it, and that's it. You can
15
upload.
years ago, when I did it off the bench, I had my phone and my MP3 recorder, and I had my guests on speakerphone while I recorded it. That's all I had when I started. And now look where we are. I have a wonderful microphone that unfortunately I'm not using right now. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No,
I
you're
feel
fine.
terrible.
Don't worry. You're fine.
But there's so many ways to get into it and make it and enjoy making it first and find your voice along the way. So that's my advice.
You've got a compliment here. I think this may be someone who listens to your show.
Okay, cool.
Tony. Omni Tony.
I'm not familiar with the name, but hello. Thank you,
Much
Tony.
respect for putting much respect for putting in the effort to have mature and respectful content from industry voices. It's so much more important to hear discussion to hear and discuss these insights rather than toxic headline news. I think he's on about you. I reckon. I would say so. I would.
Well, if he is, then Tony, thank you so much. And if he's talking about you, I hope you're enjoying that compliment yourself.
I think it's about you, to be honest. That's what we're talking about, not me.
Well, that is a very kind compliment, and I appreciate it, and I hope that I can live up to it for sure.
Yeah, but thank you for your time tonight. It's been a good conversation. It has. I've actually learnt. I've learnt quite a bit actually. I have, especially to do with the guests and a lot of the podcast processes. I've learnt quite a bit. So hopefully,
I'm so glad to hear that. I'm so glad. And I had a blast. So thank you for having me. This was a long time coming for several reasons.
yes,
We've been trying to get this coordinated, and so I'm glad we were able to finally make it happen. You've been a bright spot in my Saturday for sure. And to anybody that's watching live or that watches later on, thank you guys. I appreciate you checking out Stubbs' channel, and if you give XCP a go, I'd be grateful.
yeah, thank you. Do you want to give yourself a shout? Sorry, tell people where they can find you.
Sure. On Twitter, you can find me at insipid ghost. It's my gamer tag as well, and on PSN, insipid ghost. And then all your podcast feeds or YouTube, the Xbox Expansion Pass is available to you to enjoy and check out. And there you go. That's where you guys could find me.
All the links are in the description for Insipid Ghost and Expansion Pass as well.
Thank you.
Welcome Invader Gaming. We're just finishing up. Thanks to the Jinner for stopping in, Leo, Court, and Masuku, and anyone who stops in and listens after the fact and on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all your download networks. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Luke, for your time.
Oh, thank you, man. This was a blast.
I've enjoyed
it.
So, I see you all in the next episode, whenever I find out who I'm having. Anyway, thanks for joining, and I'll see you soon.